Prepare to do push-ups, rookies! This is my review of Tokyo Ghoul Route A, Episode 6. And make sure to check out Episode 3 of the Powerful Nerdcast in the description box below. So I think it's safe to say the highlight of this week's episode was Akira's cat. But in all honesty, this was a pretty nice episode that was focusing on the side characters of the series. If you were expecting a big revelation behind the owl and Kaneki, you're not really gonna get it in this week's episode. You do get some scenes with Kaneki where he is struggling to control his Kagune and his brand new Kakucha powers, which is what happens when ghouls actually cannibalize on others, and they get these weird armor abilities, which are apparently really tough to control. And I'm guessing that's actually what Jason was using at the very end of the first season of Tokyo Ghoul. And that makes perfect sense, because he is a psychotic, cannibalistic bastard. But what's really cool about this week's episode is that, again, it focuses on some side characters. We get a little bit of Juzo backstory, and we get a really fantastic scene between Akira and Amon. So, the Juzo backstory is really interesting, because it's not exactly what I was expecting at all. In fact, my first thought was maybe he is a ghoul himself, maybe he is actually half ghoul like Kaneki. That's not the case. He's actually pure human in every sense of the word. However, he is a human who was raised by ghouls. That is really freaking creepy. He was actually a part of that group, which was that weird aristocratic society who wore the creepy masks, a la Eyes Wide Shut, forced to live in a cage and endure endless hours of torture from his mama, and also forced to brutally kill people in ways that you will not be able to see because it is heavily censored. I am not really too happy with all the censorship that they've been doing in Tokyo Ghoul. Apparently it's a late night show in Japan. I'm not really sure what the deal is. The first episode was really violent. They didn't cut away from anything. And suddenly we're already back to all of these big obscured black bars and censorship. And frankly, I don't like it. I know you can eventually see it when it's on Blu-ray and DVD, but still, it sort of takes me out of the moment and just sort of destroys the immersion. Despite that, this scene is really important when you see Juzo going all crazy on this guy and just repeatedly killing him. I don't even really know how he's doing it. It's so censorship. The doves bust in, they start kicking some ghoul ass, and that's when they decide to take Juzo under their care. Juzo eventually teams up with Shinohara, and they have a really nice touching scene where he begins to get close with him, and they even hang out at the zoo together. It's really interesting. It's almost like a father-son dynamic between the two. However, there's still going to be a lot more to this character and how he ties into the twins, and why his name is Rei. I'm really interested to learn about that. But he's an interesting character. He is a human who was raised by ghouls, trying to live in a human world. This explains why he's so freaking insane, and honestly, I like the backstory. But the highlight of this week's episode is getting to see Sato, Amon, and Akira go to this bar and get completely shit-faced. One of the highlights of the bar scene is seeing Sato get drunk and just have a huge outburst on Akira when suddenly he picks up his ringing phone and yells at his boss, calling him a bastard. It's a really great scene. He's immediately called right back to the office. This is a funny scene because we really get to see Akira have this big outburst where apparently she drinks way too much and she gets really emotional for a second and she almost blames Amon completely for the death of her father, and even Amon himself sort of takes on this burden and feels really bad about it. Amon admits to Akira that he carries this burden with him every single day, and then she suddenly just passes out. And this is where the scene becomes golden, because he decides to take her back to her apartment where you see her very funny looking cat, and he decides to drop her off, run immediately out of the apartment, and get her some medicine. It almost seems like he's trying to win some brownie points here, and as he's getting ready to leave, she asks him not to go, and that's because she's looking for a little bit of the D. But not the D that Amon is thinking about. More like daddy, father. Yeah, this is a really funny scene because Amon immediately feels really awkward about this, decides to go into the other room and do 7,890 push-ups. It's a really funny scene because they immediately wake up, Akira makes them breakfast, and even pokes fun at the fact that he is a pervy investigator. This scene really is well written, very funny and well timed, and really is going to strengthen the relationship between Amon and Akira, and I really appreciated it. This was not a big action-packed episode of Tokyo Ghoul, but it's an episode that did demonstrate that its characters are just as strong as its ridiculous action scenes, and I really appreciate that for it. Otherwise, other little developments, there's this one scene at the Anteku where there's this new girl by the name of Roma who is a complete and total klutz. She keeps knocking shit over, and there's a great scene where she's just running around in circles. It's basically just played for laughs. And then the final scene of the episode is we have this big group that's getting ready to come together and hunt down the owl. It's going to be a squad exclusively made for that purpose. Ending this week's episode, which was pretty good. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Tokyo Ghoul, the Akira Amon scene? That's really what it's all about. That was something I did not expect at all. I really thought it was going to go in another direction, but the minute that she mentioned her father, you could just see the shock on Amon's face, and just, he's a really funny character. He's a really, like, inadvertently funny character. Like, he's not trying to be funny. He's not trying to be a goofy character at all. And I know this is a weird comparison. He reminds me of Hank Hill from King of the Hill, where he's trying to be serious and being taken serious by everybody and just do a good job, but he ends up just being a laugh riot, and that's what I really love about Amon. I tell you what, Akira this week was also just, the only word I can really use to describe it is adorable. Just when she was getting drunk, that was a really funny scene. That whole scene at the bar was fantastic, especially when Sato, like, the minute they cut to the bar, you could immediately tell that Sato was drunk, just the way they were drawing him with his red blush cheeks and everything, and him just having outbursts and being real animated and ridiculous. They did a really great job with that scene. I just really wish there was a little more Kaneki stuff in this week's episode, especially the way it ended in the last one, with the owl just ripping through the freaking roof and coming down and saving him. They don't even follow up on any of that, and I'm still really interested to learn about the overall identity of this character and how it ties into the whole Aogiri group. And the group that's getting ready to capture them at the end, they say that maybe he's like the leader of Aogiri. I'm not really sure. I don't even know what their freaking motives are yet. I still don't even know what the deal with Kaneki is, why he decided to leave, and why he's still constantly battling with himself and his ghoul side. This is all stuff that's probably just going to be dropped like a bombshell at the very end of the series. That's the way I see it at this point, because they're just keeping all of the Kaneki stuff real secretive. But this week's episode was great. The Juzo backstory was really good and really disturbing, despite the fact that it was heavily censored. And, of course, we had the Akira scene at the bar and at her home, which was just so freaking hilarious. That really had me laughing out loud. I really enjoyed it. So, I think this was a pretty good episode of Tokyo Ghoul Route A, that if you've been following the series or if you've been reading the manga version, I think you should check it out. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. That's right, my friends. Pretty good episode. Go do some push-ups. Check out this episode. Pretty good stuff. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up by hitting the like button, and please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Tokyo Ghoul Route A. Who do you think the identity of the owl is? What did you think of the Juzo backstory? And what did you think of that drunk Akira scene? Remember, guys, if you have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, and make sure to check out our brand new podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. Yes, episode 3, it's in the description box below, and you can see a link for that at the very end of this video. Thank you guys for watching. Super Kami Guru 9000 out.